Actually, this is a really interesting tweet. I'm going to read this. I just looked it up. From this guy, Rick Burton. It's actually about the coronavirus. And he goes, everyone I know on Twitter saw this coming. Everyone I know on Facebook thought it wasn't serious. Everyone I know on Instagram is still on holiday. Everyone I know on LinkedIn thinks the economy will be fine. And he's talking about how like social networks are reality prisons, because like that's what everyone does, right? So I think like that's what's happening is like these platforms, because of the way they like create them and control them, they can like literally move your mood and like construct this reality around you, especially with the newsfeed, right? Like if you're just sitting on your couch on Facebook scrolling and everyone's like, oh yeah, coronavirus isn't a big deal, that's what you're going to believe because that's what everyone around you is saying. So social networks can like create this reality around you now.
Yeah, well, at the time of my recording, I have been and will continue to do some coronavirus themed episodes. And some of them are a reaction to Facebook, where I see like the Facebook arguments and declarations that we've seen for a decade now have never been attached that closely to reality. You know, you basically have your accountant friend and sort of your yoga instructor friend arguing about politics or science, which are topics that they're not qualified to argue about, right? Mm-hmm. Well, now all of a sudden we have coronavirus is a time where we actually need to listen to medical professionals, right? That we actually do need to stop arguing and listen to people who know what they're talking about, who are looking at data and actually, and this is an important thing because the medium is the message in the vernacular of Facebook, admitting that you're wrong, that you were wrong about something means that you're wrong about everything. It's sort of this gotcha culture. Well, yep. Scientists and doctors, they modify their conclusions based on data all the time. So if we're in this Facebook reflexivity where we say, oh, well, this doctor is useless because he was wrong last week. No, he's practicing science. You know, science is about using your data, drawing your conclusions, and then altering your conclusions based on data that's available. Coronavirus is it's a novel virus. It's we don't have immunity to it. It's very new. We're still figuring out how it works. So the reason that I talked to a doctor was sort of in response to what I was seeing in Facebook, in that people were sort of in argument mode instead of let's be adults and listen to what's happening mode. I'm curious. I'm curious to know your thoughts about that. But then also, is podcasting its own vernacular? Is it its own McLuhanian medium, or is it just radio writ large?
I think it is different from radio in the sense that I don't think anyone in the past could just have a radio show. So now like anyone can literally like go on Anchor and start their own podcast, right? So it's that same thing where like production is now like anyone can produce, but distribution and building an audience is becoming more consolidated, because I think what happens with this is like all of these feedback loops. So like the people who are bigger have more data, so it's easier to get bigger, right? Like companies like Amazon, that's why like you have all of these big behemoth companies, because the feedback loops, and that's the other thing about like social media is the acceleration is way faster. So like I can put out a podcast and it can go from like 0 to 100,000 like this, right?
Right.
Before, if you had a newspaper, you couldn't do it because like you had like production costs and all these things with books and stuff. Now it's just like, boom, it can go like this. So I think like that's how it's a little different from radio. But yeah, I mean, I think if you look at, there was a lot, it's interesting that to see where you can get the most updated news about coronavirus, for example, I think it's Twitter and podcasts, like even news is behind. And I think the reason, so these are two cultural things I've noticed, and it's not from reading a bunch of people and stuff about coronavirus that are interesting is like, one, coronavirus, it's like it completely goes against American sensibilities. So like American sensibility is, let's say like you're being attacked by a terrorist, right? It's the next day you go out and you're like, I'm proud, like we're not going to let a terrorist like make us stay at home. And in this case, it's literally like, no, you have to stay at home to stop it, right? The other thing is like, let's say like someone's like, hey, there's like this group of terrorists in your city or whatever. People would be like, oh, we're scared, right? This is something we can't see, right? And there was this really good tweet from Balaji Srinivasan, who was probably one of the first few people posting about coronavirus, where he's talking about how if you look at American defense, right? We have all of these things that we can do. We can like freeze bank accounts. We have national borders. We have surveillance. We have all these like military bases around the world and all of these things, none of them apply to the coronavirus. It's like, it's asymmetric. It doesn't have a work-life balance. It works 24/7. And it's like tearing through our society and we can't see it. So I think for most people, the reason they don't get it is because they don't see it and it doesn't fit into what their perception is of someone attacking your country.